We are live on YouTube. Thank you all for joining us as well. We'll be starting shortly.
So, hello everyone. Good morning or good evening. Thank you so much for joining our webinar tonight, or again today morning. My name is Yulia Petrachuk. I'm the artistic director of the Lyrica Classic Entertainment. And this is my colleague, Carlo Mahfouz.
And I'm the director of strategy and innovation at Lyrica Classic. And thank you so much all for joining us today.
Before we start, make sure that you choose the right language to listen to. The option Russian or English is listed in your screen's down menu if you click on the globe icon. You can also use Q&A chat to ask questions during the session that our guests will answer at the end of the interview. And today, our webinar with Maestro Everett McCorvey is a part of the international virtual project Spread New Music to the World, a collaborative artistic program between Russia and the United States with the support of the US Embassy in Moscow. And it features the new American oratorio Requiem for the Fallen by American-Belgian composer Emmanuel Dubois. You can find more information on our website, www.lyricaclassic.org. And our guest today is American conductor, singer, producer, artistic director of the National Chorale and American Spiritual Ensemble, Dr. Everett McCorvey. Hello, Maestro. It's an honor to have you with us.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So let me introduce you a little bit more. So Dr. Everett McCorvey is a native of Montgomery State, Alabama. Joining the University of Kentucky faculty in 1991, Dr. McCorvey is a professor of voice. And since 1997, he has been the director and executive producer for University of Kentucky Opera Theater. He has performed all over the world at such venues as the Kennedy Center, Metropolitan Opera, Radio City Music Hall, and Queen Elizabeth Hall in London, as well as on known stages in Austria, Brazil, China, Czech and Slovak Republic, and many, many other countries. Dr. McCorvey is the founder and music director of the American Spiritual Ensemble, performing spirituals and other compositions of African-American composers. As well, Maestro is the artistic director of the National Chorale in New York City. And Maestro has managed to sustain both performing and teaching because each makes him better at the other. Maestro, would you like to add anything?
No, that's very good and very true. I enjoy all of my jobs, and I'm very happy that I have the opportunity to be involved in so many projects.
That's great. So, I already mentioned your dedication to spiritual music. And of course, our Russian audience specifically, would like to learn more about this genre. Let's first play us a little bit from one of your performances with your spiritual ensemble. Carlo? So this concert was in January 2020, so basically it's recently. Okay.
I
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Really beautiful.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about this performance.
Yes, that was in Lincoln, Nebraska, and it was the beginning of our 25th anniversary tour. We tour every year throughout the United States, and then in the summers, we tour in Europe, and we also do a small tour in the fall. So this concert was a concert at the First Plymouth Church in Lincoln, Nebraska, and it was a combination of the local choir there, the American Spiritual Ensemble, and a children's choir. So it was quite a collaboration.
And right before we were locked down, basically.
Yes, yes. We were able to get through all of our tours before the lockdown. Our last concert was on March the 11th in Syracuse, New York, at Syracuse University. And then, of course, the world shut down on March 13th. So I was very happy to be able to finish the tour.
Well, that's great. We just shared with our audience links to your websites, and recordings. So please, we welcome everybody to follow Maestro McCorvey and follow his performances and plans for the future. So what does it mean, spiritual? And what is the structure of the music? Where does it come from?
So the American Negro spiritual really started when the slaves were brought to the United States. The first slave stepped foot on the soil of the United States in 1619. So it's been just a little over 400 years that since the first slave arrived in the United States. And of course, the slaves came here against their will. They were many from West Africa and other parts of Africa, and where they were kidnapped and brought to this country. When they came, they were not allowed to they were not allowed to speak their language. They were not allowed to sing their songs. They were not allowed to be with their family members. And so they had to learn a whole new way of communicating. They couldn't speak their language with each of their other people who came over. So they were allowed, however, to attend church. And through church, the slaves began to learn the stories of the Bible. And as they learned these stories, they went back to their own camps to tell these stories. But imagine a person being kidnapped, brought to a country, and not able to be free, and to have to work for anywhere from 12 to 16 hours every day, with only the rest day being Sunday or part of Sunday. And so the work was very difficult. And a lot of this took place in the American South. So we're talking Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Texas, and Louisiana, places in the southern parts of the United States. And so they had to find a way that they could survive this trauma. And so one of the ways that they learned how to survive was by singing songs. And they would sing in the slave fields as they worked. And the slave masters allowed them to sing because the slave masters realized that when they sang, they produced more work. And so the slave master allowed them to sing, but it was a very brutal existence. They were beaten, they were raped, they were sold against their will. It was an awful time in this country for people of color. And so singing was one of the great stress relievers that they had. And so as they sang about a better day. They sang about going to heaven. They sang about freedom. They sang about not being in bondage anymore. And so all of this led to the creation of the spiritual. And so the definition that I use for spirituals is the folk songs of the American Negro slaves. These are their folk songs. And there are about 6,000 spiritual melodies. And these melodies, there probably are about 3,000 that have been cataloged at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. And so these songs were simple melodies that people created as they worked in the slave fields, in the cotton fields. And it was very hot and very dry. And people were desperate to try to find relief. And so they sang these songs as a way of relief. And so after slaves were free in 1865, well, really 1863, but some parts of the country did not get the notice until 1865. After they were free, then these songs continued to be passed down through generations. And so now these songs are a part of the American musical tradition, and they are sung throughout America. And as I mentioned, they started off as just melodies, but now composers and arrangers have taken these melodies and created beautiful harmonies, like the song you just heard, This Little Light of Mine. That was a Moses Hogan arrangement. And so the other thing that's interesting about spirituals is that there are no newly composed spiritual melodies. Okay. All of the melodies are arrangements.
Okay.
And so when you see a spiritual, it will say arranged by, because the melodies are hundreds of years old.
It's more already like folk music, basically.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's like folk music. And I'm sure you have folk music in your country that's very similar.
Yes. And composers, great composers like Tchaikovsky and Rachmaninoff, they use them.
Yes.
Well. Yeah.
Yes. And so these melodies now have become very popular in the American musical tradition. And spirituals now are sung all over the world. But the exciting part for me is that I get to champion these works and share them with many parts of the world. And it's a form of music that is truly American, and because it was created here, and it was created during a very difficult time in our history, but now it's music that everybody sings.
Yeah, and I know that many other genres came from this music.
That's exactly right. I I call spirituals the mother music. And the reason that I call it the mother music is because if you can think about the history of our country, of the United States, up until the time of slavery, the United States did not have its own type of music because United States was a country of immigrants.
Exactly, yeah.
And so you had the German, you had the French, you had the Italian, you had the English, you had all of these different, it was a melting pot of different countries that had come to America to stake out a new home. So there was no national music that could be identified as American. And it was really not until the spiritual came that America found its voice. And so from the spirituals grew jazz and blues and gospel and popular music, Broadway. All of that can be traced back to the spiritual. And so the forms of the spiritual, probably the most important form in the spiritual is called call and response. And call and response, it's like one singer sings and then the rest of the group responds. And so the call and response came right out of slavery. When people were working in the fields, somebody would just start singing, and then the other people would respond to what that person was singing. And so when that happened, it happened all of the time. And so that's a form that is now very popular in American music and pop music, in Broadway, the call and response. In Detroit, there was a company called Motown, and Motown created a lot of pop artists like Diana Ross and the Supremes and Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell and Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5. All of these groups were based, their music was based on the call and response technique, where the lead singer would sing a melody and then the backup singers would respond. And so that whole type of singing, way of singing, that genre came out of the spirituals.
Interesting. So how does it reflect it also in the classical music?
Yes, thank you. That's a very good question. And I have to give a little history so that you will, because a lot of people may not know this history. After the Emancipation Proclamation and the slaves were free, then this music still lived on, but it was still in a raw form. And then in the 1890s, a Czech composer whom you probably have heard, his name is Antonín Dvořák. And Dvořák came to the United States to head a music school in New York City called the National Conservatory of Music. And Dvořák came with the proviso that he be allowed to take into his school Black citizens who were newly freed, but many were still just beginning to be educated. Mm-hmm. Because if you can imagine, the slaves were not educated. Mm-hmm. And so after slavery was over, you had hundreds of thousands of newly freed Blacks who were still yet uneducated. And so new colleges were started all through the South to help to educate these newly freed slaves. Well, Dvořák wanted to be able to accept Blacks into his conservatory. So they agreed to that. And so Dvorak was able to bring Blacks into his school. One of the reasons that he wanted to do that was because he understood the importance of folk music. As you mentioned, Tchaikovsky and other Russian composers who took folk music, Dvorak had done the same in his country. He took the Czech music and made the melodies into melodies for string quartets, melodies for orchestra, melodies for chamber ensembles. And so he knew the importance of folk music. In the United States, however, the folk music of the American Negro slaves was considered not important, trite. It was considered, no one was paying attention to that music. And so when Dvorak came and he allowed these Black students to come into his conservatory, he began to learn about the spirituals and these melodies. And as he taught the Black students the rudiments of music, these Black students taught him a wealth of spiritual melodies. And so Dvorak wrote probably his most famous symphony in this country, in the United States. It's called the Symphony for the New World, the Ninth Symphony.
Yeah, famous one.
And in the preface of the New World Symphony, he wrote that in the music of the Native Americans and the American Negro, you had all that was needed to create an entirely new school of music. And so this sent shockwaves around the world as you had a Czech composer to come to the United States to tell the United States about music that was already here, but not yet regarded as serious. And so Dvorak took these melodies and he created spiritual-like melodies in his symphony. And so after the symphony premiered, composers all over the world began to look at spirituals and take spirituals and these melodies more seriously. And so Dvorak's probably one of his most famous students was a composer by the name of Harry T. Burleigh. And Burleigh took it upon himself and his colleagues to say that they had to write these melodies down. Because again, up until this time, the melodies were just passed down through the years from family to family, but they were not written down. And so Dvorak had this influence on Burleigh and his colleagues, and Burleigh and his colleagues began to write this music down, write these melodies down. And so they started experimenting with new forms of these melodies and writing quartets and symphonies and piano arrangements of these spirituals. And so now in the classical world, classical singers of all colors sing these spirituals, and many Black singers will sing spirituals as a part of their recitals, because now there are a lot of arrangements of spirituals for voice and piano. And so that's how it's gotten into the classical world. And Burleigh was a classical singer also. He was a composer and a singer. And he would always end his concerts with spirituals and his arrangements of spirituals. And so that has sort of become a tradition among Black singers where they will finish their concerts singing spirituals. But I have to say that spirituals are not just for Black people.
Just
Spirituals are spirituals are for everyone, because now spirituals are American music. And so because it's American music, there is a lot of interest in this music and these beautiful, haunting melodies. And so spirituals are sung by all. And recently, there is a very large organization in the United States called the National Association of Teachers of Singing.
Okay.
Or it's called NATS, National Association of Teachers of Singing. And they have just recently created a new category for spirituals, so that most of the singers who are a member of NATS, they compete against each other in college, in different competitions, and there's a professional division. And so they have these lists of songs and lists of things that people can sing and requirements. And now one of their requirements, one of the categories will be a spirituals category. So now thousands of singers will be introduced to the classical spiritual as part of their work in college. And that is the way that we will be able to perpetuate the spiritual and keep it alive for generations to come.
That's great. Thank you so much. It was very interesting. So how did you start your music education, or from where did you got the love for music, and when did you decide actually to be a musician and then a conductor and singer?
Yes. Well, I grew up in Montgomery, Alabama, and I grew up during the civil rights movement in the 60s, early 60s. I was born in the late 50s. And in Montgomery, Alabama, there was a major civil rights movement for equality, for voting rights for Blacks. And most people, of course, know Reverend Martin Luther King, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And Dr. King lived about 2 blocks from my house. And my parents knew him, and his assistant was Ralph Abernathy. And Reverend Abernathy was my father's minister. And so as a child growing up, I had the opportunity to be around some of the most important people in America, in the world, as it relates to civil rights. And so Reverend King, Martin Luther King, loved spirituals. And Martin Luther King would use spirituals in his sermons and in his speaking. And he would always quote texts from spirituals. And so that was where I was introduced to spirituals. My father, in Reverend Abernathy's church in Montgomery, Alabama, the name of the church was First Baptist Church. And it was one of the larger auditoriums where meetings could be held. And so many of those iconic photos of Martin Luther King in the civil rights movement, many of those photos in the church, it was my father's church.
He was in Canada, right?
Yeah. And so I got to experience that when I was a child, and I was introduced to these amazing melodies and spirituals. And then there were choirs that came through Montgomery in support of the civil rights movement, like Tuskegee Institute Choir and Hampton University Choir and Morehouse. And as these choirs, Alabama State Choir, as they toured, they came through Montgomery in support of the civil rights movement. So I heard these singers singing these melodies in 4-part, 6-part, 8-part harmonies. And they touched me greatly. So I decided, I went to college in Alabama at the University of Alabama, and I majored in voice and with the idea that I would become a singer. And but in high school, I was influenced by several conductors who I had the experience of working with, and I enjoyed it very much. And so in college, I also studied conducting because I thought at some point after my singing career that I might also be a conductor. And that's basically what happened. I finished my degrees, I moved to New York, and I freelanced as a singer and had the great pleasure of being able to sing at Radio City Music Hall and the Metropolitan Opera. And then I turned to begin my work as a professor at a university. And so I teach now at the University of Kentucky in Lexington, Kentucky. And I have been here for 29 years. And so it has been a wonderful experience for me. And it has allowed me to continue my work of singing and conducting. And I started the American Spiritual Ensemble in 1995. And then in 2014, I was invited to serve as the artistic director of the National Chorale in New York City. And so I spent my time traveling back and forth from Kentucky to New York. And I enjoy that very much. And I have missed it during this time of COVID. And I'm really looking forward to getting back on a plane and starting to travel again.
Well, tell us, please, a little bit about your university. Are you accepting their international musicians? I'm sure
Yes.
our audience is very interested about that.
Yes. The University of Kentucky offers degrees in all of the areas of music. It is a comprehensive university. And so we have students here from all over the world. They can receive a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or a doctoral degree. And we also have been very blessed to have scholarship money for students who might be interested in coming to the University of Kentucky. We have students, we have a big competition called the All-Tech Vocal Scholarship Competition. And the All-Tech competition, we have prize monies of over $500,000. And this money can help students who want to come to the university to study voice, study opera, study vocal performance. And so each year we host this competition, and the winners receive a full scholarship to the University of Kentucky. They receive $12,000 in prize money. They receive $10,000 a year to live on while they're here. And so it is a very, very lucrative prize for the winner. And we offer 2 of those prizes at the graduate level, and we offer 4 prizes at the undergraduate level. And so the result has been we are able to recruit people from all over the world. And we are in competition with the major conservatories of the country. And we have been very excited about the quality of students that we have in our program. We have about 125 students in our program.
That's great. Can you tell us briefly how to apply for this scholarship?
Yes, very good. The way to apply is to apply to the University of Kentucky. And the website is www.uky.edu.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go to that website, then you go to music and you apply to pursue one of the degrees of music. If you want to pursue a master's degree or a doctoral degree or an undergraduate degree.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you do that, you audition for us, and then the voice faculty will recommend you for the competition. So you have to be recommended.
You audition live, or you can submit your recordings?
Well, because of COVID, we are accepting videotapes and recordings, and we hope that soon we will be able to be back to being live. We are not sure in January, however, that we will be open yet in terms of the world and COVID. Yeah. And so probably the competition is in March. So we will see how we are in March, but we will make the decision whether or not we will hold it live or virtual. But students who are interested should apply, because most likely it's going to be virtual.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, and this is actually a great opportunity right now for more far.
Yes, and the application time is now for this to happen. Okay. And the way you apply is after you apply at the University of Kentucky, then you send a videotape, and then the voice faculty will review your videotape for the for entrance into the program.
That's great. Well, for sure we will follow with the information in our emails after the interview, because I think it's great, to be able to study in other country, and this is a great opportunity.
Well, and if there are students who are interested in contacting me, they can contact me at my address at the university, which is McCorvey, McCorv, as in Victor, EY, McCorvey at uky.edu.
We will share it as well. We will send them email. So everybody will not lose any information and contact. So tell us a little bit about National Chorale. So do we accept also their professionals from other countries?
Yes. The National Chorale is a professional choir. We perform at Lincoln Center in New York City. And we give 3 to 4 performances per year at Lincoln Center. And the performances are mostly of the classical musical titans, as I call them, Beethoven Ninth, Mozart Requiem, all of the major choral pieces. And it's with orchestra. And of course, Lincoln Center is a 3,000 seat hall. And so the performances are very exciting because it is right in the mecca of music in New York City at Lincoln Center. And I started working there in 2014, and we audition every year singers from around the New York City area and singers from around the country. And we have several international singers in the ensemble as well, in the choir. And so it is open to all singers to audition. most of those auditions are live because singers have to have access to be able to get to New York for the performances. Because it is a professional choir, we only rehearse a very short time. We rehearse the week before the performance because if they are professionals, we expect them to be able to prepare the music. And then when we come together to make something special happen. But we don't come together to learn the notes. We expect that they have done that already. And all the musicians are paid, and we have soloists who come from all over the world. And so, again, soloists will send me applications and videotapes, and those who can audition live in New York, we like for them to do that. If they can't, they can send an audition video to me, and I can consider it that way as well. Most of the singers who audition, we hear a lot of managed singers, but we also hear singers who are not managed. And so the idea is to give the professionals an opportunity to perform. And so we have, it has been a great joy to be a part of that organization as well.
That's great. Have you ever performed in Russia?
We have not. And
maybe we should do something about
yes, I think that would be a very good collaboration between the two organizations.
Great. So we would like just to remind people, we have a little time left. If you would like to ask question, Maestro, so please, this is the time. So Maestro, tell us, what advice can you give to modern, to young people, young musicians?
Yes.
How to survive in this modern classical world of classical music?
Well, I will say first that we are in a very unusual time with the pandemic. And this is something that none of us have ever experienced in our lifetime. And so it's very easy to be afraid and to be shocked into not working. And so what I try to tell the singers, performers is create a list. I call it a COVID list of everything that you can do to help you to become a better musician.
That's a good
and a better performer and a better person that can market your skills. Do you have a website? If you don't have a website, this is a perfect time to create a website. Does your website need to be updated? Does your resume need to be updated? Do you need to learn new arias? Do you need to make new connections? All of these things you have time now during COVID to do. You cannot just sit and do nothing. This is an important time to help to better yourself while you have this unique time to take as much time as you need to do that. So, I have taken the time we have redesigned the American Spiritual Ensemble website. We've redesigned the National Chorale website. I'm in the process of redesigning my own personal website. I've created new stationery. We've created virtual choirs. We're writing letters. We're raising money. All of these things that we can do during COVID because we have the time. So my COVID list is very long. And so I encourage everybody to have a COVID list of everything that they can do to help to better themselves while they're doing this time. And the other thing that I would say is that if you have a passion for music and a passion for performing, that must be the most important passion in your life, so that you can work hard to create the career that you want. And because we have been blessed with the talent to do this, it doesn't even feel like work. It feels like I'm playing every day. And so I'm still waiting to work the first day in my life.
Awesome.
That's great. So just one more question from me before I will read the other questions. do you work with a particular composer which arranging music for your ensemble, and maybe you even looking for other composers to do that, or you use already arranged music?
Thank you. We have several composers who will create arrangements of these spirituals for the American Spiritual Ensemble.
Okay.
But I will say that I am always looking for new arrangements of these spirituals. And so if there are composers out there who are interested in sending me arrangements, please do. I love to try to champion new arrangements by composers. And by the same token, with the National Chorale, I'm always looking for compositions to be able to champion in New York. And so I would encourage composers to send me arrangements and send me their compositions, because it's incumbent upon us in these positions to be able to support composers who want to do this, and to support their work and to try to get their names out there.
That's great. We have quite a few composers right now with us. I'm sure they're happy to hear that. And we will share it, with other composers who are maybe just starting to compose. And, Russians are very good in that.
Yes, I know. And that's why I wanted to say that I'm very interested in receiving music.
Okay, great. So, very interesting question from Evgeny Makarov. Hello, maestro. So, bel canto vocal technique, does it align with the spiritual genre? And if there is a difference, and where?
Very good question. And the answer is yes. And let me tell you, one of the big things that is a misconception is that spirituals are equal or are like gospel music. Spiritual music and gospel music they are different genres. And so spirituals in the classical spirituals that we perform with the American Spiritual Ensemble and that I perform are using bel canto technique. And so we sing in the head voice. We use all of the techniques that you learn in classical singing. And so we don't use a lot of chest voice and belting. That's more in gospel music than it is in spirituals. They are both important American art forms. And of course, gospel music is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And one of the reasons that I started the American Spiritual Ensemble is because I wanted to make sure that people knew the difference between the spirituals and the gospel music. And so I love both, but my world was more the spirituals. And so in the spirituals, you use bel canto techniques.
Great. Well, that's very good to know. Yeah.
Yes.
And so we have a few more questions. What book would you recommend for reading in the field of music in the historical direction? From Arkady Vinogradov.
Well, I would say I'm reading a book right now, and I'm doing our concerts in January, February, and March will be a virtual concert.
Mm-hmm.
And we are taking readings from actual slave narratives, slave stories, and we are partnering them with spirituals that were sung during that particular time. And so one of the books I'm reading right now is a book by Eileen Gunther, is her name. And the name of the book is In Their Own Words. And what Eileen has done is she's taken all of these spiritual narratives after World War I, actually. There was a big push to begin to write down these stories of these slaves before they passed on. Mm-hmm. And so there are in the National Library of Congress a lot of stories about slave stories. And after the Emancipation Proclamation and the slaves were free, there was also a big push to write down these stories. And so Eileen Gunther has taken these stories and put them into a book. And so I would encourage anyone who's interested in learning more about the stories of the slaves and the connection of those stories to the spirituals, I would encourage you to read her book. And it's called, her name is Eileen Gunther, and the name of the book is In Their Own Words.
In Their Own Words. Okay, very good. So one more question from Evgeny Makarov. Have you ever participated in arranging music, or maybe you composed something?
I have done some arrangements of spirituals. We sing one of the arrangements. It's called Old Time Religion, and I did that arrangement with a colleague of mine, Keith McCutcheon. But I'm really so busy, I don't take the time to just sit and make arrangements. Because in addition to the National Chorale and the American Spiritual Ensemble, I also teach voice at the University of Kentucky. I'm also the director of the opera program. And so it is a very busy life. And so unfortunately, I don't get to sit and make arrangements. I did not put that on my COVID list because I knew that wouldn't happen. I thought about it.
Yeah. Okay. So here, Emmanuel Dubois, actually, he's composer of the Requiem for the Fallen, and he's saying something. Carlo, could you?
Yes. So he just had a comment for you, Maestro. Thank you for your presentation. As a composer, I would comment that spirituals have added energy to all existing forms of music, like making the sunlight even brighter to every one of us. It is a true gift to the world in search of hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those comments. That's wonderful. That gives me joy and hope for all of us when I hear comments like that. We want these spirituals to be performed all over the world. And I know that with the beautiful singing that happens in Russia, many choirs would sound fantastic singing this music with the rich voices that I hear from the Russian singers. And if you listen to the American Spiritual Ensemble, they also have these rich voices.
Very rich.
And so it would be a pure joy to be able to perform some of these spirituals with a Russian choir.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, we will looking forward to it.
Okay.
Everything that it happened.
Okay.
Maestro, yeah, we are actually already over the time. Yeah, so at the end, would you like to share with us any your future plans, concerts, anything? And I know that you teach also privately, right?
Yes, yes, I do.
Will share also your information if somebody would like to take lessons with you, because now we have technology basically to use it, and yeah, this is an opportunity.
Yes, well, I teach lessons to singers all over the world, and I'm very open to doing that. Of course, we have all learned how to teach now through Zoom and all of the different platforms. And so I'm very happy and interested in doing that. We are preparing some virtual concerts for the National Chorale. We're doing a virtual Messiah later on December 20th. And then the American Spiritual Ensemble will have their virtual concerts that we will begin to publish in January of next year. And we're all hoping that by next summer or early fall, we're able to be back in person and present as well, because we certainly miss doing that. Yeah, but we look forward to being able to do that.
So, and all this information will be on your website and the website of the ensemble.
Yes, that is correct. And we will make sure that you have it so that you can publish it on your website as well.
That's great.
Thank you.
Well, Maestro, thank you so much for a fascinating conversation. We learned a lot today. It's a really pleasure to meeting you.
And thank you so much for your generous time. Really, we went way overboard, and it's been great. We really appreciate it.
Well, I am delighted to be able to do that. It's been such a pleasure to meet both of you. And also, I think that your work is very important. I think in this time, we want to make sure that everyone knows that we want to collaborate and we want to be together. And we want to have friends throughout the world. And the more music that we make together, the more we realize that we all want the same things.
Absolutely.
We want to be able to provide for our families. We want to be able to share joy with our neighbors. And we want to come together as a world in peace and understanding. And so I appreciate very much the work that you're doing.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Such a powerful message to live on, and I think that's awesome. Thank you, really.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
And thank you everyone who joined us today morning or today evening. And we will follow again. Yeah, we will follow this webinar with email with all the information of Maestro.
And it will stay recorded on YouTube Live, so everyone is able to share it, and the link will be shared as well. So anyone who did miss it will be able to watch it later as well.
Yeah, and the Russian subtitles will be added to YouTube, because on YouTube we don't have choice of the languages. Great. So again, thank you so much, everyone. And we are looking forward to see you next Saturday, where we will have our next two special guests. One of which is Amaury Duclozel, who's supposed to be actually today as well, our guest, but he got sick. So we apologize about that. And we moved his webinar for the next Saturday.
We hope he feels better soon.
Yeah, and we wish him all the best. Hopefully he feels better. He's in hospital now. Amaury Duclozel is a French composer, conductor, and founder of the Contemporary Music Festival in France. And second, our guest will be Italian conductor of Washington National Opera, Giovanni Reggioli. Probably Maestro McCorvey knows him.
Yes, I do.
You work together even, yeah. Yeah, so thank you so much again, everyone. And please join right now listen together with us a little piece from Maestro McCorvey concert. Carla will share it now. And please enjoy and have a great day. So Carlo will put it now, and again, this is from your ensemble. Technology doesn't work so quickly. There is no sound.
Can everyone hear, I guess? Yes?
No, I can't hear it.
No.
Okay.
It's not this one. Well,
Second.
it's, for some reason it doesn't work.
We will share the link then afterwards, I think.
For some reason there is no sound. Yeah. Could you see it though?
Yes, I could see it. I remember that. Yes.
For some
That's a
reason,
fun video.
well, we'll try it again.
We're gonna give it one more try. Just hold on with us for a second. And can you hear?
No, there is no sound.
Maestro, can you hear it?
No, I can't.
Mm.
No, there is no sound.
Yes.
Wow, that was very powerful. Well, thank you again. And
Thank you.
next Saturday, everyone. Yeah, and Maestro, we hope we can have another session with you.
We would like that. We would enjoy that very much.
Thank you so much,
Thank
all,
you.
and have a great one. Have a
Have a
great one,
great day.
Maestro.